Alright, today's lesson we're going to talk about the Pythagorean theorem, which looks like this. Now this theorem is going to be really useful when dealing with right triangles. If you forgot what a right triangle looks like, well, it kind of looks like this, right here.
Alright, clearly every triangle has three sides. But with the right triangle, it has two legs that can be labeled A and B, but they can be interchangeable. And then we have the hypotenuse, which is the largest side of the triangle, and is also always opposite the right angle.
Okay, let's take a look at an example of how to use this. Right here we have a right triangle, and as you can see, here's the right angle, and so this 2 and this 4 are the legs. So first thing we'd want to do is label them as either A or B. It doesn't really matter. So 2 can be A and 4 can be B. And then the hypotenuse is always the longest side of the one that doesn't touch that right angle, so that's going to be C. And that's kind of what we're trying to find. So the formula, if you remember, it goes A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It helps to write it. And then on the next line, you just kind of replace, instead of A squared, we're going to say 2 squared, plus, instead of B squared, it's going to be 4 squared, equals still C squared, since we don't really know what C is. Now just take our calculator and we'll say, what is 2 squared plus 4 squared? And you probably could figure it out without a calculator, because that's 4 and that's 16 right there. Oh no, scientific notation mode. Oh, okay, yeah. So make sure you're not in scientific notation mode, if you were from last week. And then we'll go 2 squared plus 4 squared. Hit enter, and it says 20. So we end up getting 20 equals C squared, but the answer is not 20 because we have a letter that's squared. So you got to remember, how do we unsquare a letter? Well, the opposite of squaring is called square rooting. And we're going to do that golden rule of algebra. We're going to put a square root, but you got to do it on both sides. So a square root and a square basically cancel each other out, and I usually scratch out the root and the 2. And then C is going to equal whatever the square root of 20 is. Now if you use this calculator, you're going to say second squared of 20. When you hit enter, it's going to still say something like root 2 squared of 5, which could be an answer choice. You might look at your multiple choice options, but if not, hit the toggle button. It looks like it is 4.47. So 4.47, and then round to the nearest tenth. So 4.47, the closest one I have is 4.5. Okay, now let's move on and take a look at example number 2. The biggest difference between example 1 and example 2, as you can see, there is no picture of a right triangle. So you have to read the story here where it says the lengths of the legs of a right triangle are 6 and 8. So if you wanted to sketch a right triangle, just to have one, it's just kind of like drawing an L, and then that third line is the hypotenuse. So they say the legs are 6 and 8. Doesn't matter which one you call 6 and which one you call 8. And then the hypotenuse is this one right here. Remember, when it comes to labeling, we would say A is 8. It could have been A or B. And then B will be 6. It could have been A or B. But then this one has to be C. And we'll just go through 8 squared plus 6 squared equals C squared. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And you get 100 equals C squared. Now the answer is not 100. Remember, we've got to square root it. Some of you might know, you square root each side. You might actually know what the square root of 100 is. It is 10. Remember that to do the square root on this calculator, you actually have to hit second first. And then there's 2 root buttons, one that says X root and then one that doesn't say X root. You want to hit the one that doesn't say X root, like that. And you put 100 in there. Hit enter. There you get 10. So the answer is 10, not even a decimal, it's just exactly 10.
Alright, moving on to example 3. It says find the value of x and then round the answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, this triangle is a little different than the ones we've had previously because this time they give us the hypotenuse, which is the largest angle, is always opposite the right angle. So we see our hypotenuse is going to be 10, which means we write out a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we start plugging our numbers in. One of our legs is 9, so you can plug 9 in for a or b. I'm going to use a, so 9 equals a, and 10 is going to be my c. Okay, so we don't know what x is, so you can plug in x or just leave b squared equals c, which is 10, our hypotenuse. Then we solve this one again, and again you can use your calculator to do this or do it in your head. Now to solve, we're solving for b because we need to know this other side. So 81, subtract 81 from both sides, cancels out, subtract 81 from 100, and if we don't know, we can do 100 minus 81 equals 19. So we have b squared equals 19. Then, just like we did in our first two problems, we must square root. So we're going to have to square root both sides here. Once we square root both sides, as we learned, these two cancel out, and we need to know the square root of 19. So second, we can clear the screen, second square root 19, push enter. Again, it just gives the square root of 19, so we must use the toggle button down here at the bottom. Double arrows, and we get 4.35. So b should equal 4.35, and when we round that, we should get 4.4. Answer A.